So CKV, we also talked about the last point being about money, and I know for a fact, and though I don't know the quantum, I know that you actually donate a very large percentage of your savings or your salary into philanthropic causes. Can you tell me a little bit about that and what made you like that?
See, one of the great things about Titan is the ability to travel. Many other companies, the ability is there. But I was wanting to travel, especially into the deep parts of the country. And I do that even today. And I use the train, like we discussed. I use the scooty all the time. My wife's scooty is my most favorite vehicle. I cycle. So when you do all that, you are continuing to live in what we generally call Bharat, versus being not just in India, but being in a bubble which is a very niche of India, right? Which many of us end up being part of. So that's therefore despite India becoming an economic power in the last 2 decades, I know what is still happening with a lot of disadvantaged people all over India because I'm there on the ground, if not with them, but certainly around them, among them kind of thing. And I also was for many years, between 2007 and 14 or something like that, the head of CSR of Titan Company, apart from my business role. And that took me into the disadvantaged sections in a very formal way, into villages, urban poverty and all that. And so on the one hand, the role of money in my life had always been what it should be. And in a sense, therefore, I had a decent amount, which I was not aware what to do with, honestly. And there were all these people who very clearly needed money, help, support, whatever it is. And so it just sort of, some dots connected in my mind. And I said, the best use of my money is this, not buying a big bungalow or a bigger car or a bigger holiday. Fortunately, my children ended up doing their education in India. Otherwise, that also becomes a big bill for people in our circumstances. And especially in undergrad education in the US means quite a lot of money for our parents, right? So my children studied in India, cheap education. So I had a fair amount of money because of my needs being what they were. So just connect. As simple as that. And it's so joyful to find a very purposeful, utilization of them. And it's not just the money, but I keep going, like Shahjahanpur is also for that. So I keep going to the villages and to the hills and with those communities all the time, every year. And that gives me a deep sense of rootedness. It sort of re-energizes me. It makes me so much more grateful because despite all this, I'm still in the top 1% or even less of the country, right? Despite giving away. And so the gratitude increases, the energy increases, the joy of, when you see people with so little being so joyous, you're also, that joy comes to you as well. So, it's a paisa vasool, I would say, of a very high order.
So that point, I completely agree with you. I think the more compassionate you are, the more giving you are, the happier you get. And what a lot of people mistake in life is that happiness comes when you add value to yourself. Whereas actually you are adding much more value to yourself when you add value to others and when you help others. And I've also sort of experienced it firsthand in the last 3 years, where I've been part of Azim Remji Foundation's work in the most vulnerable communities in healthcare. So we started with the pandemic support, and in Bangalore, for example, we're working with a few slum communities, and we have rolled out a health initiative there, setting up centers as well as having community health workers who go household to household, understand the problems and come back. And when you hear about some of those issues which are there, and you feel, wow, we are so privileged. There's so much we need to be grateful for. And the only way to really be happy is if you can also spend time and effort and money in supporting a lot of others too, who are less privileged. So, one of the very powerful stories I tell people is many of us take our privilege for granted. We are lucky that our parents had the money where when we are being carried by our pregnant mothers, they had good nutrition, because that aspect actually can directly impact the IQ of a child who is born. And the first 3 years, the kind of food you eat, if it is not nutritious, you have another 20 IQ points which is gone. And so you start with such a huge disadvantage in life, and then it is self-perpetrating, right? Then after that, you don't get a good job. You get only a very, daily laborer kind of a job. And hence your children also become like that. Somebody needs to break that. And only people like us who have the ability to do that and who've been blessed abundantly can actually make that happen.
The other thing about happiness, I feel, Ramji, is that some of us may have a counterpoint saying that what is happiness? For example, if I'm on a scorching sort of pace of whatever I'm doing and I'm achieving, and that's like a drug for me, and it energizes me, that's happiness for me, which could, of course. And I wouldn't want to go arguing down that path. Let's say, as long as you think you're happy, it's fine. But I also feel many people may not even know that they're unhappy because they're so much on the treadmill. And when they sort of reflect, they may realize, my God, it seems a little hollow actually. What I thought was precious. And that is what, in a way, some advice from whoever is listening to this, to reflect. If you think you're happy, no problem. I mean, we are not suggesting any particular way of living life. But are you really happy? And do you want to be happy? If you really want to be happy, and just pull back, reflect, conclude if you're happy, then continue doing whatever you're doing. But if you conclude that maybe you're not, then these kind of things, the role of money, bubble, authenticity, all those are available for you too.
So I have, I deliver talks on happiness, by the way, and that's one of the things which is very close to my heart. So there are two different kinds of happiness, which is defined by a lot of psychologists, etc. There's hedonic happiness and there's eudaimonic happiness. So hedonic happiness is when on day to day, when you get something and you feel happy. And what happens there is that everybody, or each of us, have our own set point of happiness. And you get that high for a little while and then you come back.
So the distinction between
so
joy
eudaimonic
and
happiness is something which is inherent, which you build when you have a sense of purpose, when you have a meaningful life. And that is what will actually increase the set point itself. The other one is like sort of, around the set point. And so unhappiness about or stress about things which you usually encounter in life, which happens to even those people who are on the treadmill, as you said, right? They may be very happy that they're having a great, happy, successful career, etc. But every once in a while, they will have issue with their family or their children or whatever, right? And or their friends or whatever, and then they feel unhappy. Now, when you have eudaimonic happiness, those things tend to be far less because you are able to take over. To take those in your strides and get over it very fast. So again, compassion is something I see in Titan reflected very strongly. I've seen that people are given second chances, third chances, etc., and support to become better at their work, rather than in many organizations a hire and fire kind of a culture, especially nowadays. So you want to talk a bit about that, CKV? It will be nice for the audience.
It actually arises from looking at people as people, and in fact, Bhaskar used to say many times that why are we calling this function human resources? A person is not a resource. Okay, a resource is something that delivers a certain value, and after it stops or reduces, it is no longer useful. That is how a resource may be. I mean, I've not checked the dictionary, but intuitively that's what I think it is. How can we say human resources? Okay. But for some reason, I don't know, maybe it was a little bit of laziness on all our parts, we continued to name that function like that, even though we behaved with people like you're describing. And when the new person joined 1 year back, he was called Chief People Officer and not Chief Human Resources Officer. And the whole function has been named as people. So I think that is at the center of this. Because if you, like typically the American thing, the whole pink slip kind of thing, it'll be the HR which will meet the
not even the
employee
boss.
and give the pink slip. Not the manager, not the boss of that employee, right? So that is it's actually sort of emblematic of the word HR. I mean, the person is a resource. There are time ho gaya now, cut le yahan se, like that kind of thing. So, therefore, one is from an organization point of view, people as people. The other is as people, as human beings, our empathy for other people. So these together are the reason why in Titan, and because we've also stayed for a long time. And it is a little bit of a chicken and egg. No, because we are like that, we have stayed for a long time. Because we are stayed for a long time, we become like a family. Extended family. So when you look at that person is like a distant cousin. I mean, if I were to just sort of stretch the analogy, obviously he's not a distant cousin, but she's a distant cousin. But part of the family nevertheless. And you don't sort of toss out the person from the family, even if distant.